Stephanie Izard here in Chicago, making green beans from Girl and the Goat. These green beans have been on the menu for 9 years. They're one of our guest favorites. They're one of the first dishes that came to be when we created the restaurant 9 years ago. So I wanted to show you how easy it is to make at home. It's actually the whole reason why we created this little goat sauce and spice line. Our guests used to come into Girl and the Goat all the time and ask, how do you make those green beans? They call them the magic green beans because there's just something about them that makes you want to eat more and more. They're very craveable. So we decided to put the sauce in a bottle, and that's how this little goat came to be. So I'll show you how easy it is to make at home. First step, I've got about a pound of green beans sitting here. We serve these year-round at Girl and the Goat, and of course green beans kind of go in and out of being in season. If you can get them in the summer, locally, wherever it is that you live, here in Chicago we get them in about July and August. They're always going to be the best. So I've got some water on the stove that's just started to boil. I'm going to add some salt to it and make sure we get a nice rapid boil. This is also the only salt that we're going to be adding to the green beans while we're cooking, so make sure that you get enough salt in there to get a little flavor into the green beans. You want to make sure that your pot is nice and big so when you put your vegetables in, they can swim around in the boiling water and get nice even blanching. It also helps your water stay boiling when you add in your cold green beans. One tip, we always like to leave our vegetables out for just a little bit to come to room temperature before we put in our water. That way the boiling water doesn't come down completely from ice cold vegetables. Into the water we go. But you can start your timer. It's going to take about 3 minutes. We want to make sure that they're sort of al dente, nice and bright green, still have a little bit of texture, not real mushy. All right, it looks like these are just about ready. Done about 3 minutes. We'll give one a little taste real quick and make sure they're good. This is a big one. Perfect. There's still a little bit of texture to it. It's not gotten too soft, but definitely can chew right through it. And that way it's going to soak up our sauces really well. The reason that we blanch this and then put it directly into ice water is so that we can preserve the green color. We do this in the restaurant because we're going to be blanching them ahead of time and then cooking them in the wok to order. So put them in your ice water and make sure that they get nice and covered in ice. It's also going to help when we put them in the wok from cold. They're sort of going to get this pop with the hot oil. It's going to help the cooking process a little bit as well. You want to make sure that anything you're putting into a wok with hot oil doesn't have too much water on it because it's going to splatter right into your face. I've had that happen before. So while our green beans are draining, I'm going to go ahead and get our other garnishes ready to go. It's such a simple recipe. We're just going to add in some shallots. So we're just going to trim this up and slice it nice and thin. The joy of cooking is that you can add in any ingredients that you have around or something that you like. If you don't want to use shallot, you can add in some spring onions if they're in season, some green garlic. You could throw in some red onions or sweet onions, really whatever you have around. I just like the idea of adding in an onion of some sort. It adds a nice savory note to the mix. I'm going to go ahead and slice these just as thin as we can. Shallots are definitely an intensely flavored member of the onion family, so you want to make sure you slice them nice and thin. We do leave them cut into sort of rounds or slices as opposed to mincing them just because you want to get that sort of burst of flavor every time you come across one in your green beans. Plus they kind of look cool when they're draping over the green beans. Then I also have a bowl of salted cashews sitting aside. If you're allergic to nuts or don't like nuts, skip those as well, but it's always nice to have something textural, something crunchy. I think a lot of times chefs or home cooks make things full of flavor and then they kind of forget that texture is part of that as well. You want to make your whole mouth getting excited to eat. That's why we add in the salted cashews. But you could put in some pepitas, some nice pumpkin seeds. You could put in some sunflower seeds, something other than nuts if you want, but going for something crunchy really adds something to the dish. Okay, so first step is you want to make sure that you get your wok nice and hot before you start cooking. A lot of times I get asked, what are some of the things that home cooks should learn from chefs? And one of the things is making your pan hot before you start cooking. I think watching some of my friends or my husband at home cooking sometimes and seeing protein stick to the pan or seeing things stick to the pan is that they're just not letting the pan get hot enough. I think there's a little fear of hot pans. Wok cookery is meant to be in a hot pan, so we want to make sure we start letting it get nice and hot before we add in our oil. Always want to use an oil that has a high heat when you're cooking with a wok. Grapeseed oil, sunflower oil, peanut oil if you don't have an allergy. Something that can really take that like 400 degrees or more to make sure that it doesn't burn while you're cooking. Just going to put about a tablespoon of oil in there. And then again, we want to let that get nice and hot so you hear a sizzle when you put in the green beans. It's not because it's just fun to hear that sizzle. When you put it in, it's just sort of the proper cooking technique. You want to work nice and hot and fast. And that's what makes cooking with a wok so much fun. Actually, I love cooking with a wok. When I was growing up, my mom had an electric wok. We used to do wok cooking all the time. It's this super high heat. It kind of holds in all the heat with the shape of the wok and helps you cook dinner really quickly, which is amazing. Original woks don't have a flat bottom, so you weren't able to use them on the stove. But now that we have this awesome flat bottom wok, we can cook right on your stovetop at home, just over high heat, and you get the same sort of flavors and the way of cooking that we can do in our Chinese restaurant, DuckDuckGo, or in other Chinese restaurants, something that's been going on for years in Chinese cookery. It's just a great way to bring in the high heat. Here we go. Ooh. So we're gonna put these in just that little bit of oil. What we wanna do is cook the green beans, sort of stir frying them until we get a little bit of blistering from that oil that we put in. I think some people think with stir frying you need to use a lot of oil. You don't, a little bit goes a long way. You can get it to coat right on the green beans and get that nice bit of blistering. This right here, you can see is sort of like, that's the money shot right there. If you watch in a Chinese restaurant or at DuckDuckGo, you'll see our cooks with these big long sticks kind of just working their vegetables around in the wok and always having them move around, part of the stir frying to just kind of get them to cook nice and evenly. Again, any sort of vegetables work really well with this. I actually love, when you do broccoli, some cauliflower, something that's gonna really capture the sauce is really great. Even taking the same idea and just doing onions and peppers, and you could put it over some sliced steak or something for almost like a fun fajita-inspired meal. There's so many different things you can do. It's sort of endless. The Southeast Asia sauce that we're gonna add is made with fish sauce, which can be an overpowering ingredient, but what we've done is added in the perfect amount of brown sugar and a little bit of citrus. It makes it caramelize onto anything that you're cooking with those little bits of sugar and sort of takes away the scariness of the overpowering flavors of fish sauce that it can have. I love putting it on my vegetables when I'm stir frying them. I often use my wok at home for fried rice using leftovers, and I drizzle in a little bit of the Southeast Asia. It's pretty much good with just about anything. All right, now we're gonna add in some of the shallots that we cut up nice and thin. And these we're just gonna let get a little bit tender. Want to have, again, everything should have a little bit of texture left over. You never want to cook it until it's so soft that you don't notice it. So we're almost going to just really quick saute on those shallots. Then we're going to drizzle in our sauce. So you can smell the fish sauce and a little bit of Dijon right away. Those sugars are going to caramelize right onto the green beans. In the restaurants, we call this the saute. Just something that you want to do with high heat, adding all of that flavor really quickly and letting it caramelize onto anything that you're making. So we're gonna add in our cashews. Again, anything crunchy will do, but I love the saltiness of the cashew nuts. And that's it. We're gonna transfer this right into our serving bowl and make a quick topping. You can really smell all of the different flavors from the fish sauce. It's kind of crazy to be able to take something as simple as green beans and add so much flavor. I think that something that a lot of folks that come into Girl and the Goat comment on is, I don't like vegetables at home. What did you do to these vegetables that made my daughter eat them, my son eat them, my husband eat them? Just being able to add all that flavor. Okay, we're gonna take a little bit more of our sauce, add it into some mayonnaise. A step that you could skip if you don't wanna add this extra bit to the recipe, but I highly recommend it. This mayonnaise is actually great on this green beans. You can also take any leftovers and put it on your sandwiches, put it on your burgers in the summer. It's just an all-around simple way to add a lot of flavor, and I'm personally a big fan of mayonnaise on just about anything. Try dipping some fries into this or even some chopped up vegetables. And there you go. Girl and the Goat green beans, made with This Little Goat Went to Southeast Asia in my new made-in wok.
De pirata ou jardineira, e tudo se acabar na quarta-feira.